Welcome to the Movie Spoiler Club, the channel where you can watch movie, television, and streaming series within minutes. Today we're going to spoil the movie Gladiator, 2000. This movie story plot is about Commodus, Joaquin Phoenix, takes power and strips rank from Maximus, Russell Crowe, one of the favored generals of his predecessor and father, Emperor Marcus Aurelius, the great stoical philosopher. Maximus is then relegated to fighting to the death in the gladiator arenas. The year is 180 AD. Marcus Aurelius is the emperor who is leading the army to fight the barbarian tribes of Germania. One final Roman victory stands in the way of peace. The sun is setting on a field of tall grass and wheat. A gentle hand hovers just above the weeds as he walks through the field. The scene abruptly cuts to a stark and gray landscape. A man stands tall and strong, dressed in armor. He stares wildly at a red robin which has landed curiously nearby. The smoke and charred forest behind the man is brought into focus. The man trudges through the landscape and approaches the rest of the troop of soldiers. As he walks through, the men greet him warmly with a smile. He approaches a man closely and asks how the soldiers are. The man replies, "Lean and hungry." Then out of the forest is a white horse galloping toward the camp. As the horse nears the general, he can see that the rider still attached to the horse is missing his head. This is what they were preparing for. The catapults are in place. The torches are lit. All they need is the general's signal. One of the barbarians steps out into the open with the head in his hand. He shouts in a language no one can understand, but his tone is full of fury. He tosses the head in the dirt. The general turns to his men and says, "At my signal, unleash hell." The general mounts his horse and begins to gallop through the army, rallying the rest of the troops and preparing them for the battle. Flaming arrows are flung into the air as it rains fire through the trees. The general known as Maximus is heading into the forest to meet with a second troop of soldiers who are waiting for the signal of war. Together they charge the barbarians from behind, forcing them out of cover and into the open field. Maximus is armed with nothing but his sword. He slashes and stabs with the style and grace of a trained assassin. He is able to anticipate every opponent's move. Snow begins to fall on the ground and the sound of violins swell in the background as the images of men dying with daggers in their hearts. When the dust settles, a Roman victory is declared. Emperor Aurelius is very pleased with Maximus' effort and triumph. He has made Rome proud. Maximus graciously accepts the respect of Aurelius, but quietly mentions he would like to return home to his family. Aurelius dismisses this comment and reminds him that there is always someone to fight. He continues to illustrate the great power and influence the general has had on the army, and how that is what Rome needs in an emperor. This conversation is interrupted by Aurelius' adult son Commodus. Commodus jumps off his horse and cheerfully acknowledges the victory and compliments Maximus' job well done. He greets his father and gestures to retire to camp. The emperor pushes him away gently and mounts his horse. Marcus Aurelius is an old man and understands the time he has left is limited. He just needs to convince Maximus that he is the rightful one to take his place. He invites Maximus to his tent the next morning. Maximus is concerned that his men have given everything for their country and deserve to be treated fairly. Much like him, they would also like to return home. Aurelius smirks politely but resists releasing Maximus from his duties. Maximus believes in Rome. He insists that Rome is the light in this dark and cruel world. He feels he has done his duty and wants to return home to his family. He has a wife and his son approaching the age of 9. He hasn't seen their faces in 2 years and 264 days. Aurelius stands and formally requests that Maximus take the throne after his death. Maximus is confused because Commodus is the rightful heir. Aurelius argues that Commodus has never been a man of morals and that Maximus could end the corruption. Maximus disappointedly stares at the floor and declines the emperor's offer. The emperor persuades him to think about it, and Maximus agrees to do so. Later that day, Aurelius meets his son in his tent. Aurelius asks Commodus, is he ready to do his duty for Rome? Commodus feels this is the moment he has been living for his entire life. He stands tall and tries to hide his excitement when he turns toward his father. Aurelius simply tells Commodus that he will not be Caesar. Commodus is visibly irked but politely asks who the role will go to. The conversation gets very emotional because Commodus has never felt his father has loved him or approved of him. He begs, "What is inside of me that you hate so much, father?" Aurelius, with tears in his eyes, kneels on the ground and calmly counters, "Your faults as a son are my failures as a father." The pair embrace in an intense moment of reckoning. The hug turns fatal as Commodus suffocates his father in his arms. Maximus is awoken by Quintus. He says that it's urgent news from the emperor. When Maximus arrives, He sees that Commodus has named himself emperor. Maximus is uncertain and remains cautious. Commodus politely requests that Maximus pledge his loyalty to him and to Rome. Maximus ignores him and storms out. This upsets Commodus and he orders his men to take Maximus to the woods and execute him. In the woods, Maximus is pushed to his knees in the icy snow. Maximus pleads that he deserves at the very least a soldier's death. This means that the executioner must change his position from the side to behind Maximus, with the point of his blade on top of Maximus' neck and spine. There's a moment to breathe before accepting his fate. Maximus reaches up and steals the blade from the soldier, and with it, he slaughters everyone there. He steals the horses and makes a run for his family, eager to get home to stop his family from being murdered. He rides as fast as he can. When Maximus arrives, he realizes that he is too late. The land is burned. As he follows the signs of destruction, he drops to the ground when he finds his wife and son burned and hanged from the archway of his home. With nowhere else to go, Maximus falls asleep in the dirt, alone and vulnerable. When he wakes, he finds himself sick and captured. He and a handful of others are enslaved and sold to a man named Proximo. Proximo stages fights between the slaves for sport. Meanwhile in Rome, Commodus is reigned in as Caesar, the new emperor. The staff and senators are unsure of his experience or overall ability to handle the responsibility, but remain somewhat hopeful. Commodus rides in his chariot, with his sister Lucilla by his side. When they approach the steps of the empire, Lucilla's son Lucius runs to hug her. The senators begin to gloss over the duties and responsibilities to Caesar, but Commodus seems disinterested and bored. He has a different vision for Rome. He has to give the people something to believe in. Then the people will love him and respect him. He feels he needs to prove his worthiness. He astutely points out, the beating heart of Rome isn't the marble of the Senate but the sands of the Colosseum. Commodus plans to dissolve the Senate against his sister's protest. He shifts towards a festival of gladiators fight. 150 days of games are announced as a way to drum up support in Commodus' favor. This is happening while Maximus is being kept as a slave training as a gladiator. Proximo has been invited to partake in the games in Rome. He packs up his best fighters and they all make their journey to Rome. Maximus has won the favor of Proximo. Proximo tells him that if he wants to win his freedom, he must win the crowd. The first match is about to start and all the fighters are shoved into the Colosseum. Maximus rallies the men and persuades them to work together, based on his past experience as a general in war. When the gates open, they rush the Colosseum sands and they band together. Then a series of gates open and chariots emerge. The horses are pulling the armed coaches with spiked wheels and fighters in gold armor. As the horde bands together in the center with their shields, they are impenetrable against the arrows and chariots. As they change their formation, they managed to flip one of the chariots and gain the upper hand in the battle. Commodus was entertained for a moment, but when the battle turns sour, he has a change in attitude. The men fight viciously, killing everyone in the match. The barbarian horde is crowned victorious. Guards emerge from the gate followed by Commodus. Commodus wishes to congratulate the men on their win. Maximus reaches down for a small arrowhead dagger because this is the perfect opportunity to murder Commodus. He stands up tall to greet him, and then Lucius comes from behind Commodus, completely blocking Maximus' shot. Commodus requests the Spaniard's name. When Maximus ignores him, Commodus becomes angry. Maximus turns away and removes his helmet. When he turns to face Commodus again, he looks him dead in the eyes and says, "I am Maximus Decimus Meridius." Commodus is stunned but remains still. The gladiators have no weapon and the Roman guards are ready to protect Commodus. The crowd begins to shout "Leave" in unison, which provokes Commodus to let him leave. Maximus revealed to everyone who could hear that Commodus killed his family and that he will get his revenge. When Commodus returns to his sister Lucilla, it is clear that Maximus and she once shared an intimate relationship. It ended somewhat mutually, but Commodus is upset and feels threatened by Maximus. Another day, another fight. Today Maximus is to fight an undefeated champion by the name of Tigris. The fight begins ordinarily enough, but then a group of men are holding chains. After a few moments, the gates open and a tiger is released, chained by a leash but free to roam and swat at the nearby gladiators. With every step, a new trapdoor is triggered and a tiger pounces up onto the sands. At one point a tiger leaps out and attacks Maximus from behind. He fights it off and impales it through the throat. Maximus takes Tigris's axe from the sand and gashes on Tigris' foot. The crowd roars and Maximus rips the axe from Tigris' foot. He uses the tip of the blade to pull up the gladiator's mask, then takes a moment to wait for Commodus' command. When Commodus orders him to kill Tigris, he throws his axe into the dirt. Commodus, watching from his chair, is displeased and once again makes his way to the floor. Commodus just wants Maximus to die, and Maximus tries to tell him he cannot die. He has one more life to take. After the fight, Maximus notices an old friend Cicero in the crowd. Maximus finds Cicero later that evening, and when he asks how the men of his own troops are, Cicero says, "Fat and bored. There are big plans at work." Lucilla meets with Maximus in private, where she mentions that Commodus has brought fear and terror to the empire. She knows that her father wanted him to take on the responsibility, but Maximus refuses. The fate of Rome is left to Senator Gracchus after Maximus killed Commodus. Maximus uses his relationship with Proximo to his advantage. He asks to be released. Proximo is reluctant to do so because it does nothing for him. Maximus helps him realize that Commodus killed Aurelius. Aurelius was the man that delivered Proximo his freedom decades ago. For that reason alone, Proximo agrees to let Maximus go. The next night, the plan takes shape. Lucilla visits Maximus in his cell. She tells him Cicero is waiting with horses, and that Senator Gracchus has been arrested. She confesses her love for him even after all these years. Maximus has fought hard for the love of Marcus Aurelius, Lucilla, and now for the love of Rome. Meanwhile, Commodus awakes from a dream to find his nephew playing swords with a servant. He smiles joyously until his nephew explains that he is a gladiator, and more specifically he is Maximus, the pride and the savior of the Roman Empire. This strikes Commodus' nerves. When Lucilla returns from her meet with Maximus, she can sense something has changed. Commodus infers that he knows exactly what she has been up to, and that if it doesn't stop, someone could get hurt. Commodus has ordered the guards to break into the shelter where gladiators stay to murder Maximus, but Maximus is already on the run. He sneaks out in the tunnel while his fellow gladiators fight the guards off. Proximo is murdered in his chamber. Maximus makes it to the wood to find Cicero, but when he calls him, the horse he is sitting on takes off and Cicero doesn't take off with it. He drops from a noose tied onto a tree branch. Maximus is captured. As the sun rises, Commodus ponders his sister and nephew's fate. With Maximus in captivity, Commodus has almost won. Commodus goes to visit Maximus inside the prison. There is a scheduled battle between Commodus and Maximus. Commodus moves in closer to whisper in Maximus' ear, but then he takes a dagger out and stabs him. Before he leaves, Commodus orders the guards to conceal Maximus' wound. When the fight begins, Maximus is visibly weak. Despite no sign of injury, the two begin to battle, and even with a gaping wound, Maximus is able to maintain his distance. Commodus slashes Maximus' leg. Maximus slides his blade across Commodus' back. Then Commodus loses his sword and is shouting for a new one. Maximus is losing lots of blood. He fades in and out of a vision. Commodus pulls a dagger from his sleeve and moves toward Maximus. Maximus blocks the attack and gets the blade pinned against Commodus' throat. He pushes hard on the dagger as it sinks into Commodus' throat. He cradles Commodus' head in his hands until Commodus falls onto the ground. The crowd is silent. The vision takes over again. This time Maximus is approaching a barn door, and when he pushes it open, he can see his family. His hands float over the weeds and tall grass as he falls to the ground in the Colosseum. Lucilla rushes toward him. She pets his head gently and tells him he can go home. In Maximus' vision, he can see his son on a dirt path, and his wife just beyond him. The little boy runs up the road to greet his father. Back at the Colosseum, Lucilla and all the crowds mourn for Maximus while the emperor's body lays just feet away. Movie trivia. Do you know that Maximus' description of his home, specifically how the kitchen is arranged and smells in the morning and at night, was ad-lib? It's a description of Russell Crowe's own home in Australia. This movie gets the movie rating of 8.5 from IMDb, Tomatometer rating of 77 and audience score of 87 from Rotten Tomatoes. Thank you for watching, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments section, and hit the notification bell for the new movie spoiler video every week.